Ladles and jelly spoons, welcome back to Badgerworks. Today, all of this. I haven't done a video in a while, so I apologise for that. But I thought while I was painting this is part of a house that I'm doing for my daughter. You may have watched me do the smaller version of this. This is a massive one. And I thought while I was painting this, I would turn the camera on and kind of waffle at you a bit. So that's what I'm going to do. Kind of a state of the channel sort of thing. It seems something appropriate for this time of year. So while I'm talking to you, I'm just going to carry on painting this. I've already got a few layers of paint on this, as you can see. I'm just going to give it another coat of highlight with this acrylic. This is yellow ochre. This is the final stage of highlighting. So yeah, there's no particular purpose for this video other than for me to kind of waffle at you. So, you know, you can either watch or not, it's entirely up to you. But what I wanted to do is, because I haven't made a video for a while, and for that I apologise. But I just thought while I was doing this, as I say, I would kind of just have a little chat with you about, you know, this and that. So the first thing I wanted to talk about really was what this channel is all about, because I've had comments, quite a few comments over the months and whatnot that I've been doing this, from people saying, I think one of the favourite ones was talk less, show more, which I thought was quite funny. And I just wanted to kind of explain to people what this channel is all about. When I first started on YouTube, it was for a specific reason. I've done all kinds of different sort of creative things in my life. I've made theatre props and all kinds of different things. I was an engineer for a long time, and cosplay, things like that. And I often get people ask me, how did you do that? How do you make that? And so what I started doing was, rather than having to explain something 100 times to people, or to 100 different people, I started putting things on YouTube. So when I made something, I would video it and then I would put it on YouTube. And then if someone said to me, how do you do that? I can say, go and watch the video. If you've still got questions, come back and ask. And basically what happened was, a while ago I got back into model making, which was a hobby I had as a child. And like a lot of people, you know, life happens, and I gave it up for various reasons. In my case, it was because I joined the army, and it wasn't really a career that was conducive to model making, and I just gave it up. And anyway, a while ago I got back into it because my son was interested, and one of the things I found was that, as happens so often in life, things had moved on. And which is not to say there were not people, you know, in those days making the most amazing models. I mean, I remember as a kid looking through the Tamiya catalogue and being absolutely gobsmacked at the things people made. But that was always a level that I had never got anywhere near. And as I got back into it, I wanted to sort of, you know, get better at it. And one of the problems I found very quickly was I didn't know what the hell I was doing, basically. And so I did what a lot of people do in my position. I came onto YouTube and I started watching people's videos to figure out how to do things. And one of the things I found very quickly was that there were lots of people out there making the most amazing models. But one of the problems I found is that a lot of people will build a model and you can see what they're doing, but not necessarily how they're doing it. And so that was a problem for me, and it's a problem that a lot of people have in my position. They've sort of come back into modelling after, you know, many years away. I mean, in my case it was about 30 years, but you know, there are people who I know who have, you know, got back into modelling after, you know, 40, 50, 60 years. And basically what you need is someone to tell you how to do things. And that's not always an easy thing to find. So what I decided to do was that as I learnt how to do things, I would put it on YouTube. And that's why this channel, I mean, if some of you have watched my earlier videos, you'll see there's all kinds of stuff on there about prop making and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of pivoted towards model making more than anything else, because that seems to be where the most amount of interest lies. And it's one of these things that, you know, if you know how to do something, then sort of share the wealth, as it were, and help other people. So, you know, one of the problems I had is like airbrushing. It's like knowing how to use an airbrush. You can sit there and watch someone do it all day, but unless you know what pressure they're using and what mix of paint they're using and all that kind of stuff, you're going to struggle. And so that's why I try and share that information as much as I can. Now, let's get the next bit. One of the things that I've found is it helps to, you know, give people as much information as possible, and that's why my videos tend to be quite long. I say people have commented that my videos are too long, but that's because I'm not just trying to show people, you know, what I'm doing, but also how I'm doing it. And don't think for a minute that I'm, you know, making myself out to be some kind of expert, because I'm not. I mean, there are people out there far, far better than me. But it's kind of, you know, whatever help I can give, then I will. And hopefully people will appreciate it, which they seem to, which is nice. But all I would say is, if that's not what you're after, if you just want to watch someone make a model and make a really good job of it, this quite possibly isn't the channel for you. But anyway, there we go. So yeah, but getting back to the whole thing about, you know, where have I been for the last couple of months. I'm self-employed, and the Christmas period is one of the busiest times of the year for me, and the problem that I have is, you know, I can earn more in like 2 months than I have in the previous 10, but it also means that I'm working, you know, 6-7 days a week, you know, 12-16 hours a day. So as a result of that, I don't have time to do anything else. I mean, don't get me wrong, it would be fantastic to, you know, do this full time, but it's just not feasible. It's kind of funny actually, because that leads me on to something else that I actually wanted to talk about, was YouTube and money. One of the things that I've found is sometimes people think that because you're making YouTube videos you're making a fortune. It's like that. Believe me, that is not the case. I mean, I have now, what, I think it's about 12,000 subscribers, and thank you everybody who subscribes, by the way. You are all invaluable to me. I get roughly on average each month from Google, on a good month, maybe £90, and that's a month from ad revenue from YouTube. It's not a lot. So, which is obviously not nearly enough to live on. Patreon hasn't really taken off yet, which is a bit unfortunate. But it's one of these things that, you know, every little helps. But it does mean that I can't afford to do this full time. Now, hang on, just getting the next bit. It's kind of funny actually, the whole YouTube thing, because even people who have, you know, potentially, you know, hundreds of thousands of subscribers and not necessarily make enough money to live on. And this is why you find a lot of people on Patreon, you find a lot of people selling merchandise and all this kind of stuff, because it's basically whatever you can do to, you know, make a living. And in my case, it means I have to, you know, do other work, which means sometimes it gets in the way and I can't do as much of this as I would like to. But, you know, that is what it is. Yeah. One of the things I do find interesting though about like being a YouTuber, as it were, is watching other people's videos, watching other channels, because you tend to, you kind of end up watching it through a different lens, if you take my meaning. It's one of these things that you suddenly realise that everyone's in the same boat when it comes to YouTube. And I mean, there are channels that I watch, not necessarily modelling channels, you know, other hobbies and that of mine, and they'll say things, they'll make like little comments and asides, and you realise that these people are in exactly the same boat as you. And even though, you know, that might be a channel with, you know, 10 million subscribers, but they still have exactly the same problems with YouTube as I do. And there was one in particular, and it's a comment that I hear quite frequently, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, and it is about comments. And it's one of these things that the comment that this chap made in the video was, I'm sure someone will let us know in the comments, but it was the way he said it, and it just made me laugh, because it is one of those things that whatever you do, you do get these kind of keyboard warriors who you know, want to put you right, sort of thing. And you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not belittling comments. I love comments. I love reading your guys' comments. I do love the fact that you guys actually, you know, take the time to kind of get involved with the channel, as it were, and I do appreciate it. And I do try and read every comment, and I try and reply to them as well if I can. Sometimes I can't, for a variety of reasons, usually technical reasons. For some reason, YouTube is sometimes a bit funny about actually notifying me about comments, and I sometimes notice a comment on a video that's like months old, and I think, well, I know that I didn't get a notification for that, so I didn't even know it was there. I mean, I'm not sure how many videos I've got on this channel now. I think it's, you know, 100 and something, and unfortunately I can't go through them all today and see if anyone's commented, so I kind of rely on YouTube to tell me, and sometimes, unfortunately, YouTube doesn't tell me. There's also another situation which is a bit weird, which is you get a notification of a comment, and you see it in the notifications, and when you click on it to reply to it, it disappears. And you can see it in the notifications, but it's not actually on the video, so I can't reply to it. So if I don't reply to your video, to your comments, it's not through, you know, lack of trying, shall we say. I do, like I say, I do appreciate your comments. I just find some of them quite comical. So just for a bit of background on what I'm doing here, this is, as I mentioned before, this is another one in the series of 3D printed buildings from a company called Black Scroll Games, and this was a Kickstarter that they did, and I did the small one. I think I put a link up earlier to it, and my daughter really liked it, so I'm just doing some of the others because she likes to play with them. It's kind of funny actually, I don't know if you watched the video of the small one, but I actually ended up making 2 of those because the other one went to a friend of hers, a girl who's a friend of my daughter's, and one time when my daughter went round to her house, she took this little house with her, and apparently this other little girl was greatly enamoured of the house, and she had apparently told her parents that she wanted a jewellery box for Christmas, and like a lot of little girls, she like into dressing up and costume jewellery and all that kind of thing, and they'd been looking for something suitable for her to use as a jewellery box, and they couldn't find anything, you know, that they liked. And so when she saw this, and she was, you know, she sort of said to my daughter, oh, it'd make a brilliant jewellery box and all this kind of stuff. My daughter's not into that kind of thing at all, I have to say. So she was like, what? This is a house, people live in it. But, you know, But the mother of this girl mentioned it to my missus when she was leaving, and so my missus came home and said to me about it, and so I made another one, and she's now using it as a jewellery box, so that was nice. But yeah, this is the biggest one of the set. It's been a while doing this, I have to say, much to the annoyance of my daughter, because I had all kinds of problems with the 3D printer recently. It's been working absolutely flawlessly for a couple of years, and then it suddenly started messing about. And while I was trying to repair it, I managed to to break it. I broke the thermistor off in the hot end, so I had to basically replace loads of parts, and then of course I had to re-level the bed and blah 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 blah, and it was all just a bit of a nightmare. And for some reason it just took forever to get it, you know, back sort of working in a decent working state. So this took a very long time to print, and yeah, so that didn't really help. Didn't make me very popular with my daughter, but there you go, she's happy enough now. But yeah, so I just wanted to talk, you know, quickly about what's going to be happening with the channel in the sort of foreseeable future. I think I'm going to pretty much continue as I have been. I want to try and now things have sort of settled down a bit after Christmas and everything, and the new year and all the rest of it, try and get things running again, just so that there aren't any of these big pauses, big gaps between videos is the most important thing. But I'm going to keep on doing pretty much what I'm doing. I've got quite a few projects on the go at the moment, which is something I don't normally do. I normally sort of do things one at a time, but somehow I've ended up with several projects on the go at once, which is very unlike me. But which is it does have the problem of trying to figure out like what to do next, sort of thing. And I think I've kind of ended up like a donkey between two bales of hay, trying to figure out what to do next. But yeah, we'll get to it. But I say I think the most important thing for me at the moment is as well as making more videos for you guys, but I want to try and grow the channel, because as I said before, it would be nice to get a few more subscribers on board, and maybe hit up Patron a bit more, and you know, just because it would be nice to be able to do something like this full time rather than having to, you know, keep stepping away from it to do other work. But you know, it is what it is. Like I said before, I don't make a great deal of money out of YouTube. It's one of these things actually, and this is something else, sort of talking about you know, things that I've learnt from other channels. One of the things you hear a lot on YouTube is when people will be constantly going on about, oh, you know, if you like this video, please like it and subscribe and all the rest of it. And there's a very good reason for that. And it's basically because the way YouTube's algorithm, the infamous algorithm, works is the more subscribers you have, the more views you get, and the more likes you have. And I say I'm not 100% sure of this, because it's you know, I don't work for YouTube, and they're very secretive about their algorithm. But the way it certainly appears to be is the more subscribers you have, the more views, the more likes, and so on and so forth, the more chance you are to be recommended to other people who are not subscribers. Which is interesting, because one of the things that I've noticed, and again I've seen this borne out by other YouTubers, is if you look at the statistics for YouTube, like who's been watching your videos, one of the things I've noticed is the vast majority of people who watch my videos are not subscribed. And it's kind of a weird thing, because it's like you might have 100,000 views in, you know, in a month. And of those 100,000 views, only 10% of them came from subscribers. And you just think, if everybody who watched this video subscribed, and I'm not, you know, begging for, well, I am begging for subscribers, always am, but it's this is just to kind of illustrate the thing. If everybody who watched those videos actually subscribed, instead of having 12,000 subscribers, I would have 100,000 subscribers. And I just found that really interesting. But the thing that I found most interesting about it is, from kind of reading between the lines from comments other YouTubers make, and like I say, as a YouTuber, you tend to watch people's videos in a slightly different way, and you realise that those people are basically saying the same thing. And I've actually heard people say it in their videos. Only 10% of people who watch our videos are subscribed, so why don't you hit the subscribe button? Kind of makes sense. But anyway, it is what it is, like I said. What am I doing next? The door. You can probably hear the printer going in the background, by the way. It's actually printing the last bit of this building. Because there's I'll show you in a second. Let me just do this door. But there's it has a fireplace. Oh, get in there. Where is it? Oh, here you go. See, now if you look in here, I don't know whether you can see that because it's black inside, but there's a fireplace there, and there's two versions of this model. One has the fireplace with the fire already in it, and this version, which has a big hole, I don't know if you can see that, and there's a big hole at the bottom there that leads up into the fireplace. I don't know if you can, oh, there we go. So there's a hole all the way through it. And what I'm printing at the moment is the insert for the fireplace. And the reason I'm doing it separately is because obviously this is printed out of black filament, and the fireplace insert is being printed out of clear filament, and the idea is it has a hole already in it for an LED, and there's a space to put a battery and a holder and all that kind of stuff. So the idea being, once you put it all together, you can put an LED in it, slide it up into the base there, and you have a little flickering fireplace. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that in a separate video, because I think it's one of these things that a lot of guys are interested in, is how to light things. So we'll look at that in a different video. But what do I need to do now? I need to start painting the outside. So I need the airbrush for that. Let me just clear all this stuff up and I'll get the airbrush out. Right, I don't know whether you'll be able to see this. As I say, I'm just kind of doing it. I'm just painting the plaster. This is a great way of practicing freehand spraying, because it doesn't matter if you get it wrong. The compressor's going to go off in a second, so just so you know, I'm using XF59 deck tan for this, because it's a nice kind of off-white. And so yeah, I'm just going up into the eaves at the front, and anywhere where there's plaster, basically. You don't need to go mad with this, because this is in such heavy shadow you can't see most of it. These are the bits that are more important. I've quite forgotten what I was ranting about before, but there you go. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, well, the fact that everyone on YouTube basically has the same problems. No matter how big the channel is, you all end up with the same problems. yeah, it's just kind of funny really. But it does make me feel better sometimes about, because sometimes you get people make comments and stuff like that, and it can be not hurtful, but it just, you know, you kind of, sometimes you just think, why do I bother? And then you realise that, you know, misery loves company and everybody's in the same boat, and you realise it's not just you, it happens to everybody, no matter how you know, popular they are, or you always get the haters, as it were. And the most important thing to do with those people is just learn to ignore them. And I think that's very true of a lot of things in life, you know. It's certainly something that's very true in the modelling world. I see this a lot in, you know, like Facebook and things like that, where people will ask for help, and the first 10 responses are just Google it, and it's like, well, you know, the person probably has Googled it and they don't understand the responses they're getting, so instead of being a dick, how about you just either answer the question or just move on. And I've seen people say, well, you know, I'm sick of people asking the same question 100 times, and it's like, well, that's because it's something that people get stuck on. One of the great things about, you know, the interwebs is the fact that, you know, there's this whole community of, you know, millions of people potentially that you can go to for help. But it also means that you're going to see the same questions over and over again, and it's just, you know, that's just life. And so if you don't want to help people, then don't say anything, you know, just shut up and move on. That's what the scroll wheel was invented for. So the only trouble with this is it's quite time consuming. This is one of the reasons I thought I'd turn the camera on and just ramble at you guys while I was doing it. So if I have to sit through this, then so are you. But like I said before, this is doing this kind of project is it's a good way to practice, a good opportunity to practice airbrushing, because it doesn't matter if you're not particularly precise. I mean, obviously it's like this, you know, building like this, if you're into wargaming or whatever, they're fantastic. I mean, that's obviously what it's designed for. I mean, this is for my daughter to play. This is effectively going to be a doll's house. But it's a good way to, you know, just practice basic airbrushing, practice a bit of fine control, without having to worry too much about getting it wrong. Because that's one of the other things actually, is people, I see this comment a lot from people saying, oh, I wish I was as good as you. And it's kind of funny really, because I'm not really that good a modeler. I'm really not. I get by. I get, you know, I get done what I want to get done, but I'm not. I'm certainly not a great modeler. I mean, I would say I'm mediocre at best. But the most important thing with any hobby, and this is something I try and impress on people all the time, is it's a phrase actually that stood me in good stead. Don't be afraid to be a beginner. No one is born knowing how to do this stuff. It's all, we all had to learn somewhere. And it's all about practice. And this is why I tend to, where possible in my videos, I tend to leave in, you know, if I make a mistake, I leave it in. But one of the reasons I do that is, A, so that I can show you how to get out of that mistake if you happen to do the same thing, but also just to demonstrate that it's not all about being perfect. It doesn't matter how good you are at something. You could be the greatest in the world at, you know, whatever it is, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get it wrong sometimes. Everybody makes mistakes. I mean, I'm not really a sports fan as such. I don't watch sports, but I always think a good analogy is when you watch your favourite team doing whatever sport it is they're doing, they don't always win. And the other thing is, of course, is they spend a huge amount of time practicing. You know, when they're not playing, they're training. You know, if you take like footballers and that, they might play a game, they might play one game a week, but the rest of the week they're training. Because if you don't train, if you don't practice, you'll never get better. And this is one of the things I find with any kind of hobby. You know, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And as I say, don't be afraid to be a beginner. Because the only way you can learn how to do something is to do it, to ask questions, and to, you know, that's how we learn. It's like when I see people say, you know, talk about stupid questions. Oh, that was a stupid question. And it's like, well, as far as I'm concerned, there really is no such thing as a stupid question. The only stupid question is the one that you don't ask. Because the way you learn how to do something is to ask questions. If you don't know how something is done, you need to learn, and you learn by asking questions. So, and it may be the case that somebody may ask a question that to you is really obvious, but to them they don't know. And instead of being a dick about it, either help them out or just move on. So it really is that simple. I just realised I've missed a bit. There's a beam there in the corner, I haven't painted it. See? Mistakes, it happens, we all do it. Oh, that's alright. That's actually kind of funny. That's just illustrated my point perfectly. One of the things I'm doing here though is you'll notice I'm painting the walls before I've painted the floor, and that's because you can see there's quite a lot of overspray on the floor, and when I come in to paint the floor I can get rid of that overspray a lot easier than I can doing it the other way around, if that makes sense. But you'll see as I move on, if any of you are still watching. There's probably like 4 people left watching this, and they're probably waiting to see if the ambulance turns up to take me away. One thing I will say with this, doing these walls and whatnot, you don't need to go mad. It doesn't matter if it's not a nice clean coat, because we're going to be putting some other weathering effects on over the top afterwards, so don't worry about it too much. Needs more paint actually. I'll try and actually show you how I fill the brush, because again this is something that a lot of people struggle with. So 3mm pipette, and so I don't know whether you can see that, it's kind of a struggle doing it myself. So I've kind of half filled the cup with paint. Let's put the rest back in there, and then using a nice clean pipette, this is X20A thinner, so I put in roughly the same amount of thinner as there is paint, so about a 50-50 mix, and then with this pipette again, because it's obviously got paint on it, just put it in and just work it in and out of the pipette, and that will mix it. Just pump it a few times, And there we go. And that's how I fill up my airbrush. That's also how I mix the paint. If you're looking at thinning ratios, I find for Tamiya, this is a 0.2mm nozzle, and I find that for this brush, and certainly with Tamiya paints, with the 0.2mm nozzle, 50-50 is a good way to go, certainly a good starting point. And I think, to be honest, it's for most types of paint that I airbrush, I use that as a starting point, 50-50. Sometimes you might want the paint a bit thicker, sometimes you want it a bit thinner, but generally I find for nearly everything I airbrush, 50-50 is the best place to start. You'll probably notice some really weird jump cuts in this video, and that's because, like I said, this is really just me rambling at you guys, and so there are quite extended periods where I'm not saying anything, and so I just leave the camera recording, and then I'll cut out the I'll cut out the pauses in the edit. So yeah, you'll probably find there'll be some very odd jump cuts, but like, you're not missing anything. Like I say, the most important thing here is my rambling, not so much what I'm actually doing. If any of you are still watching, I do appreciate it. I know this is not the usual format of the videos, but oh, I'm on the outside. I was just saying, oh, have I finished? No, I haven't even done the outside of this bit. Yay. Right, so now I'm going to move on to paint the interior floors, and for that I'm going to use this XF78 wooden deck tan. So it's kind of a similar colour, it's a bit more kind of, well, woody really. Anyway, so same deal as before. And one of the things you'll notice is that there are holes in the floors of these interior sections, the upper floors, and they actually have these panels, you know, trapdoors to go over them, and they just drop in to fill up the hole. But what I've done with this one in particular, I've only done it with this one so far, is I've actually put a little eyelet on it. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little eyelet that I screwed in there, and that's basically so when it's in there you can get hold of it and lift it out without having to muck about. So anyway, right, so that's that one. Right, so what I'm going to do now is the stone parts on the outside, like the chimney and whatnot. So this is just a black and white mix of acrylic paint to make a grey. So, and then this just gets like a very heavy dry brush over the top. Now there's also bits here where the plaster's come off and there are bricks showing there. I'll do those in a minute with a smaller brush, but I'll just do the big areas first with this big brush. So what you might notice here when I'm doing this, it's still technically dry brushing, but it's there's quite a lot of paint on the brush, and I'm putting it on quite heavy, but it's still giving us the detail. It's not just one solid colour. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that dry brushing can be all kinds of different things depending on, you know, how you're applying the paint and, you know, what effect you're looking for and things like that. So I mean, obviously with this, if you were doing this, you know, to look a bit more realistic, you know, you would paint all of these stones individually and all that kind of stuff. But as I say, for what I'm doing with this, this is more than enough. You might wonder why I'm getting this out of a Tamiya jar. It's because this is an empty jar. When I mixed up this paint, I just mixed it in this jar. So, you know, and then painted a blob of the colour on the top so I can see what it is. So yeah, don't throw the jars away, they're useful. Okay, so now we'll go on to a smaller brush and start doing these sort of individual sections. And here I am actually kind of painting the individual stones, but I'm not being too precious about it. I want a lot of sort of shadow and that in between them, so there we go. Oh, haha, I mustn't forget to do the fireplace inside. I knew I was going to forget that. So I'm going to make a wash now for the plaster on the inside, and again I'm going to go back to this yellow ochre and just use a little dab of that and a bit of water. And now what we want to do is, on the inside and the outside, where the plaster is, just basically go around the edge and just apply the wash. It doesn't have to be, you know, neat and tidy or anything, just go basically around the edge. And what that does is it simulates the plaster yellowing with age. And it looks a bit messy to start with, but when it dries it'll actually look pretty good because it will soak in and the colour will become less pronounced. Oh, there goes the neighbour's dog. Yappy little thing. I've got nothing against dogs, I love dogs, but that one is intensely irritating. And what's even more irritating about it is it barks so much that my parrot, I have a parrot, has started copying it. And the parrot sits on the back of the chair going woof, 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 which is so much fun. There you go. Hey ho. Still, if that's the worst thing I've got to worry about today, I think I'm doing alright. Right, so that's that all done. So what I'm going to do now is I'll do the floor as well. And to do the floor, I'm going to use basically this same wash, but I'm going to put some burnt umber in it to darken it. like that. Might need to put some more water in it. What?
I can't open the door.
Just put it on there. That was my daughter just walked in. Say hello, Katie.
Hello, Katie.
Always a comedian. Have you come to check up on progress?
Progress of what? I didn't know you were making this.
Well, you've been nagging at me long enough for it.
I have?
Yes.
I forgot.
Yeah. I might need a bigger brush for that. All this time you've been nagging about this and you didn't even realise that I was doing this one as well.
No.
So I could have just not done this one and saved myself a lot of effort, couldn't I?
Yeah, but now you've done it and now I've realised.
Yeah.
How many floors does this one have? Oh, tons.
Yeah.
Is this one of the giant ones?
This is the giant one, yes.
Take you forever.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Hey, how come this one's chimney doesn't have a hole like the other one did?
Eh?
The chimney doesn't have a hole.
What do you mean it doesn't have a hole?
Like the other one did. It had a hole straight through it.
Yeah, but that was because I drilled it out to put to put a skewer in it so I could hold it when I was painting it.
Oh.
So don't tell me you want a smoke machine in this one so that the smoke comes out the chimney.
No.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Let's think about that with the other one because there was a hole in it. It's 4 floors.
Yep.
And a roof.
And the roof, yes.
And a roof.
Yep.
Next one's going to be bigger than the house.
No, I think this is the biggest one actually. The rest of them are smaller.
What about that one where it was like that tower thing?
Oh
You
yeah.
showed me on the computer. That was gigantic.
Oh yeah. Well, I've got to figure that one out. What else does that look as well?
Doesn't look like you printed it.
No, well I haven't printed it, have I?
Yeah, I know.
I will do at some point, no doubt, but not yet.
Print everything.
Yeah, print all the things apparently, along with multiple cats.
Oh, I like cats.
Yeah, well.
Little kitty. No one would let me get a cat.
Well, no, because I don't think Ruddy would really like a cat, do you?
Just keep him out of the room.
Yeah, that's not really going to work, is it?
It's fine.
It's not fair to get a pet and then restrict it to certain parts of the house.
Yes, it is. If you have a flat, it is.
Well, not really, is it? Because it's, I say, if the animal lives in the house with you, and to not let it in certain parts of the house isn't fair. It's like when people get cats and dogs and that, and then won't let them on the furniture, and it's like, well, you know, don't get a pet if you're not going to let it on the furniture. Then
well, it's gonna scratch it all up, leave hairs all over it.
Well, then don't get an animal.
Then get one that sheds.
It's like Ruddy leaves feathers everywhere, and fluff, and God knows what else.
Newton's bunged up.
Well, yeah. Anyway. Right, so I've got to let that dry, and then that might well be it. Oh, I've got to finish the door off. and then put some varnish on it, and then...
What about the trapdoors? Or do you not do those?
The trapdoors that I've already done, you mean?
Asking.
The trapdoor and the trapdoor that I've already done, you mean?
Asking.
Yeah.
Why does it look like a door?
What?
That wooden one looks like a door.
Well, it is a door, that's why. What, this one?
Yeah, that
It
one.
is the door.
What? You just said it was a trapdoor.
No, I said I've got to finish the door, and then you started banging on about trapdoors. Right, so I've got to leave this to dry, do the doors,
Do you trapdoors?
done the trapdoors.
Put them in.
Well, yeah, but they go in like that, so that's why I put a little handle on that one, so you can get hold of it and lift it in and out, you see. What?
You just put it in.
No, I'm not going to put it in because the paint's still wet.
No, I said, do you just put it in?
Yes, you just put it in. Anyway, I need to leave this to dry now.
Okay, bye. Standing around waiting for that to dry.
Bye then.
Bye.
My daughter, ladies and gentlemen. 9 going on 49. Right, so while everything else is drying, I'm just going to do a bit of detail on the door. And basically what I'm going to do is just paint the hardware on the door, so the nail heads and all that kind of thing. I'm going to paint them silver. This is Citadel chainmail, which I believe is now called lead belcher. I might be wrong. I can never remember what it's called. In fact, while I've got this door in my hand, it has a pin at the top that goes into the door frame. I don't know where you can see that, but what I do is when they print, they never seem to print very well, so what I do is I cut them off, drill a hole, and I put a bit of cocktail stick in there, and that is a lot more hard wearing than the 3D printed material. So just a little tip for you. And this is a brown wash, Citadel brown wash, and basically what we're going to do is take some of this and just put it over the silver, and it just tones it down a little bit and makes it look a little bit rusty, or at least not so shiny. And I think what I might actually do on this door handle, because it's still looking a bit bright, I've got some this is armor wash, and it's kind of a bluey black wash. Oh, if I can get the damn thing open. Oh, there we go. And I'll put that just on the handle, just to kind of tone it down a little bit further, but it kind of mixes it with the brown and still makes it look kind of dirty. Just tones it down a little bit more. Like I say, you could go mad with this door and make it look like real wood, but yeah, for what we're doing, it's fine. And we'll just let those dry. Oh. And then we can put some varnish on it, and I think we'll be done. So for varnish, I'm going to use this Vallejo matte. I'll just put some of this in a brush and give it a squirt. For big things like this, I've got this. This is a Draper branded trigger brush. I mean, you can buy the exact same brush from other people. It's just this one happens to be Draper branded. This was the first airbrush I actually bought, and it's quite handy because it's a side feed, and and it's a single action brush, but because it's a trigger, you've got a lot of control over the output, shall we say. But the nice thing is it's got a big cup, and this has got a 0.5mm needle in it. So I use it for spraying, you know, big things. So in this case, for doing a big area like this, it's ideal. So we use that. When you're using a big cup like this and you've got a lot of paint in it, it's a good idea to put the lid on, because it stops it sloshing around and going everywhere. So I'm doing these trapdoors first, because what I want to do is give the coloured side a spray, but the back side, where it's got the stick stuck to it, there's actually going to be like a white patch under there. So what I'll do is, once this is dry, peel that off, hit it with a black rattle can, and then spray over it again with the varnish. So just by doing these bits first, it just makes it easier to do that. I generally spray the underside first, because it gives it more time to dry, so that and then I can hit it with a hairdryer and then actually put it down. So I've got here a spray can of Humbrol black primer. This is just matte black primer, and I'll just give that a quick blitz over just to get rid of that white spot. Just like that. And then I'll hit it with a hairdryer. And then give it a little spritz of the matte varnish. There you go. And that just gets rid of the white spot. Right, and that will do for those. So I've got some more of these little eyelets here, and to put those in, it's very simple. You just take a pin vise and just put a hole where you want the eyelid. You don't need to go all the way through. And then just screw it in. And it's like I say, it doesn't need to go in far, it's just, I mean, that's enough. It's just to give you something to hold on to. What you have to be careful of with these things is they're, because they're so tiny, if you put a little bit too much pressure on, they'll just snap. So, anyway, that's those. So I'll clean out the airbrush and we'll wrap this up. So I thought I'd just talk you through the kind of finished articles here. This is the original house, if you remember. It's obviously quite small. So it's just the roof comes off. There's a single room inside. So that's that one. Put that over there. The next up is one that I didn't actually do on camera, but it's this slightly larger house. So we have an upper floor here, and then this roof comes off and you've got the first floor there, or the ground floor rather I should say. So that's that. So as you can see, it's a little bit bigger. And then finally we have, this is the one that I was just working on, and as you can see, it's a bit of a monster. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 floors and the roof. So yeah, that's the whole set so far. So thank you for sticking with me. If any of you are actually still watching, I appreciate it. Next one I think I'm going to do is the watchtower. That's the one she's quite keen on. That's going to take a long time to print, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think I might take a leaf from Mighty Car Mod's book, and we'll have a little code word at the end of this video, and you can post that in the comments to prove that you watched right through to the end, and we'll see who the real hardcore fans are. So what should we use for a code word? We'll say surf and turf. There you go. So if you've watched right to the end, put surf and turf in the comments. Anyway, thank you for joining me on my little rambling rant, and I hope that you'll stick with me for future videos. Actually, if you like this format, then let me know, and I'll do more of them in the future. Just basically chatting while I'm painting something. But anyway, yes, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you for sticking with me, those who did, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers. Bye.